The curse is real.
Hello and welcome to The Curse is Real, a Once Upon a Time podcast. We are Once Upon a Time fans, and we will be discussing spoilers for both Season 1 and the upcoming Season 2. And lest you forget, we will be swearing a lot. I'm Martin, and with me is the very sexy voice of Mike.
And I'm John.
And I'm Katie, and
I was expecting John for you to talk and be like, yeah, I'm Mike.
Almost!
We have to change identities every show.
Jesse and I aren't sexy.
Which one of you has the sexiest voice? That's the issue.
But it's not me.
Oh, yeah.
I'm Jesse.
Oh, Jesse.
And I believe we have YouTube comments. Tell me, Mike, do we have YouTube comments?
Yes, Martin, we have YouTube comments.
I'm glad. I was hoping we would have YouTube comments.
That's good because the YouTube comments are present.
I'm so excited for the YouTube
Could you read
comments.
the YouTube comments to us? We can discuss the YouTube comments.
I will read you the YouTube comments. All right, here are the YouTube comments.
Now, where did you get these comments?
One.
We got them from Google.
Stealthy's dead, by the way, you guys. No. Anyways, so we've got two main comments that I want to read, one of which was massive, and so I summarized it, and one of which I'll probably just read you the whole thing, which was also somewhat massive, but not nearly as much as the other one. So the first one is, this is just my personal theory with how the fairy tale land changed once the book was changed. What I think happened is that what we, the viewers, are seeing in the fairy tale world isn't what actually happened in the world. We're just seeing what the book says happened. So for all we know, everything we have seen could have never happened, which is why it was able to change like that once the book was changed by Tarvidi73. And
I don't know what they're talking about.
basically what they're saying is that it's possible that all the flashbacks that we're seeing into Fairy Tale Land are not actually what happened, but rather what the book says happened.
And see, that would make sense, but there are plenty. There were a couple episodes where the book wasn't present because it had been lost, and the flashbacks were still there. The flashbacks don't reference the books.
That's not the main problem. If you remember, in our last show, we said that the reason why there were those two scenes that were supposedly happening at the same time but were slightly different, we were like, oh, no problem. That was because one scene was before the book was changed and one scene was afterwards. That is incorrect, actually, I do believe, because we were watching our episodes for today, and the book got changed before that scene happened.
Mm-hmm.
For the first time, and we're going to have the scene happen again after we do the Red Riding episode.
Well, no, this is the second time.
This is
No,
the
this
second
is
The
time.
second time we've seen that episode.
No,
I'm sorry, that scene. That scene changes twice. I
it
realized that
changes
today.
twice.
Yes,
Okay,
it does.
yeah.
Okay,
Twice.
fair enough. But either way, one of those changes happens
Yes.
without the book being changed. So, no, that cannot be the explanation for it. Or if it is the explanation, it was not very well written. So,
Yeah, because the book would need to have changed again.
exactly. So that is debunked. And our second comment here was pretty massive, so I'm gonna just summarize it for you. They said that they had a theory that that Jefferson having his memories was more than just this is how the curse, used them, and that's kind of where I was falling in. You guys disagree with me, but he said, or she, whoever it was, said that their theory was that all of the Wonderland residents retain their memories. Okay, however, because they were kind of not in Fairy Tale Land, probably. Either way, bear with me here, and they retain their memories, and Regina puts all of them, except for Jefferson, in the asylum where Belle is being kept. Because it would be silly for her to make an asylum just for Belle.
Why do you keep pronouncing
And
it like
the reason
Asylum.
that? Asylum.
Xylophone.
Asylum.
It's like asylum.
Isn't asylum part of a plant?
No, am I not pronouncing that right?
Asylum.
You know it's
Asylum.
Asylum.
Asylum. Yeah.
Like ass.
Okay.
But
No, I've heard it pronounced both
Asylum.
ways, so I didn't think there
I've
was.
never heard
Me
asylum.
neither.
I have. But anyways, all right. So
Well, you heard it from a person in an asylum because they were
Yes.
crazy.
They're in a straitjacket and be like, I'm in the asylum, and you just pick up.
Well, it could have been from an
He
Aussie.
thinks-
After all, they call themselves Aussies.
Well, he
True.
thinks he's inside a plant. He's like, I'm in an asylum.
That explains a lot.
So, anyways, all right, all the Wonderland people retain their memories, and everybody except for Jefferson were put in the asylum, and Jefferson was kept out of the asylum by Regina because she knew that there was a savior coming of some sort. Because if you remember, Rumpelstiltskin had that conversation with her in Fairy Tale Land fairly early on in the series, and she knew that she needed some sort of weapon against that. And while she did not know that the hat did not have magic anymore, she did know that Jefferson was the only person who knew how to work the hat. So she needed to keep him somewhere where, she could have access to him. She puts him right next to where, his daughter is going around and everything, and tortures the poor guy, and uses that to blackmail him into doing what she needs. It sucks that they kind of use that to make him a throwaway character later on, but that's the theory as to why he's retained his memories.
That's kind of interesting, but I'm
It
wondering.
might be a little bit too complicated, I think.
I'm wondering what would give this person the idea that the other Wonderland characters retain their memories, just
Because we
because
haven't seen
I
any
don't
of
think we haven't seen any other Wonderland characters yet.
Right, 'cause
It's an
they'd be in
interesting
the-
idea.
I mean, they'd be in the asylum, wouldn't they? I
Well,
mean,
yeah.
that's why we haven't seen them. That's the
Here's
theory.
one thing to consider is that when they go through the hat, or actually, the hat reaches through time and space and spits the apple out.
Mhm.
But when he uses the hat in his episode on a regular basis, he goes into that portal room and selects another realm. Nothing actually says that those other realms were even affected by the curse.
Mm-hmm. Well,
So
in theory,
he might be the only person from Wonderland to end up in Storybrooke. He
well,
could have
I
been
can prove
in
you
Fairy
that. I
Tale
can
Land
prove you
at
that
the
right
time.
here. I can prove that right here. We know that the hat can connect from Earth to Fairy Tale Land. We know that. Okay?
And it can go back in time.
Right,
Yeah.
and that too. Okay? We know that Earth that is connected to that by the hat. We know that. The curse hits. We also know that by that theory, Wonderland is a different world from Fairy Tale Land and from Earth. Okay?
Yep.
The curse hits Fairy Tale Land. It doesn't hit Earth. The rest of the Earth isn't cursed, just Storybrooke. So we know, therefore, that Wonderland is not cursed. Which begs the question: are all of the Wonderland people actually stuck in an asylum in Storybrooke, or was Jefferson not in Wonderland when the curse hit, and he's the
Yeah,
only one
that's-
from the Wonderland?
I think
story?
he wasn't in Wonderland.
I'm
Yeah.
betting
Yeah,
that
that's-
there's more to his backstory that we haven't.
And you
been-
know
It's
what?
gotta
I
be.
read something just yesterday that we will see more of him in season 2. So I'm sure we'll get more of his story.
Yeah.
Yep.
So
Because
that-
actually, thinking about it, didn't he try and retire in Fairy Tale Land?
Yes, and then Regina brought him out of retirement. And that's what caused
he
the whole
well, he
problem.
tried to retire from the hat stuff. Yeah.
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 Because of his daughter.
So he
I
might
believe.
still have been in Fairy Tale Land when the curse fired. It would just fit.
Well, he
and
would
make
have had
sense.
to. The thing is, he would have had to get back to Fairy
Yeah,
Tale
he-
Land. It gives you a tight time schedule here because he would have had to get back from Wonderland to Fairy Tale Land somehow, and as we all
With
know,
the
he's
hat
going
that
insane trying to
works.
figure that out. He would have to. I don't know how he would manage it, but he'd have to do that, and he'd have to do that with no time to actually go and recover his daughter, because.
Yeah.
Why?
Well, I mean, I would okay, that's an assumption on my part, but I would assume that he did not reunite with his daughter before the curse hit.
Yeah. Although at the same time, if you think about it, he might have, like, if he got out of Wonderland, he might have ended up in a place completely far away from where he started. So him getting to, like, his daughter and the people she's staying with might have taken time, and he might have run out of time.
And mind you, we also have to find out why the Queen of Hearts had Regina's dad locked up and what that whole story is.
Yeah.
So we'll definitely be seeing more of that, but that happened before Jefferson got locked in there, so I'm wondering if we'll get that in season 2 or later.
Oh, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
Yeah.
So.
All right, so those are the comments.
Makes-
YouTube
All right.
comments.
Those are
YouTube
the
comments
YouTube
are over. All of the YouTube comments have been read. I hope you enjoyed the YouTube comments. The YouTube comments enjoyed
I
being
greatly enjoy the YouTube comments. Thank you for reading the YouTube comments. Mike.
Asylum.
So, news.
All right. Well, as of today, which is the 18th of July.
Today, the 18th of July, 2012, and this is Nightline.
And
10:50 p.m. Eastern Standard Time.
Do you know where your children are? So we had San Diego Comic-Con happen the previous weekend, and there was a Once Upon a Time panel there, and they gave us a ton of news. And I'm going to start reading off what I know. If anyone has any interjections, then please feel free to come in. First one, we have 2 new trailers. One that introduces the appearance of what is assumed to be Captain Hook, which means that they are going to probably visit Neverland in Season 2. And the other one called Storybrooke, which is hilarious and basically shows a lot of the main Once Upon a Time characters as if they had little webcam videos on a dating website. And Jesse and I love that one.
It's amazing. I love it. Henry's acting is like, ugh, in the beginning. Oh, wait, no, that was the Captain Hook.
Yes.
The Captain
You
Hook
thought things were normal here.
The Captain Hook trailer started off really kind of lame, but then, like, once the actual clips came in, like, that was really cool.
It was cool, but it was also kind of hokey because it's like, wait, Captain Hook is in Storybrooke? That doesn't make sense.
Well, it might make sense, because remember, they wanted Peter Pan to be Grant.
Well, yeah, I mean, it makes sense, but, like, why is literally Captain Hook hanging out in Storybrooke? I imagine it's just for the teaser, but it does seem kind of hokey.
Yeah, well, I mean, with all the host of new characters they're introducing, including Mulan and Aurora and Prince Philip and all of them, you know,
I was right. I was right, by the way. I get to brag about this. I was right about Anastasia. I was right.
Yes,
you guys owe me.
Yes, you are.
I'm not sure if this is gonna sound really stupid or really clever, but I think that Dr. Whale might be Captain Hook. Because
there's only one problem with that.
Mm-hmm.
He's not missing a hand.
That is true.
Nor does he have any facial hair.
Maybe it's a prosthetic hand. Maybe it's literally like it's so good. It's like Luke Skywalker hand.
Maybe Captain Hook is actually really tiny and he like Dr. Whale's a robot and he like lives inside Dr. Whale and operates him from the inside. Ever think of that? Huh?
Totally legit.
Yep.
Maybe Dr. Whale is the crocodile.
Yeah, other than the hand thing, that is an interesting theory.
Mm-hmm.
That just means that Snow White hooked up with
No.
Just to say.
And you know what?
Don't.
You know what? When he was looking at Ruby's ass, he was like thinking, "Is that Wendy?"
Oh boy.
I wonder if Tinkerbell's actually going to be in there. That'd be interesting.
That would be interesting. Yeah.
Is it
she would just be a fairy. I mean,
she would be bitchy. I wonder if she would be as bitchy as she is in the actual movie because she's a massive bitch. Like, holy
talking about
well, not really massive, more like a petite bitch.
Yeah. He tries to kill Wendy and is like, yeah, I wanted to kill her. It's cool.
Is that in the cartoon or is it in the movie?
No, that's in the cartoon movie.
Really?
Yeah, the Disney movie. Speaking of Dr. Whale, though, his identity is going to be revealed in Season 2.
Yeah, so we'll find out if you're right, Jess.
Mm-hmm.
And if so, I can say I called it. I can do the I called it dance and the song. It goes along with it.
Yes, we will see your I called it.
We'll have to record a video for it and put it up on our channel.
And if he has a prosthetic hand, then I get to do the I called it chorus.
The I called it dance is just me pelvic thrusting in my banana costume.
Wait a second. If he does have a prosthetic hand, wouldn't Mary Margaret have found out during their one night stand? And wouldn't she have said something?
Maybe she enjoyed it.
Maybe they used it. Oh my god.
Okay.
Ouch.
A musical episode of Once Upon a Time may happen at some point. I personally think it had better be I'll Make a Man Out of You from Mulan. I'll be very disappointed as
It's not gonna be one of the old songs.
I don't understand how you think that would happen.
Yeah.
I don't at all. I don't. It was one of the notes from the panel discussion.
No, I mean the Make a Man Out of You.
Because that would be the most epic ever. I don't care. It'd be funny.
I'd prefer they do an original musical.
Oh, me too.
Like the Scrubs musical episode was.
As long as Henry is tied down and has duct tape on it out the entire time.
Yes, please.
The
Henry,
curse
don't
is
sing for the love of God. Like,
real.
learn to speak, and then you can sing. Okay. He gets better at the end of the season.
The writers also want to bring in international stories, most likely folk tales and legends, which are not just grim-based.
Leprechauns.
Jack and the Beanstalk will be making an appearance, like along those lines. And one of the most interesting ones that I've came across is that now that magic is in Storybrooke, Ruby can turn into the big bad wolf once a month when the moon shines.
Once upon a time.
Once upon a time.
No. Not only can she has to.
Yeah, she doesn't have her cloak yet.
True.
Yeah, she has to. She doesn't have a
Ooh.
cloak. We will learn why certain parts of Fairy Tale Land, like Snow White's glass coffin, appeared in the real world in the season finale. Rumple's son Bay might appear in season 2, but that's not confirmed yet. This is a little bit obvious. The relationship between Emma and Mary Margaret will change because they've just from being best friends to being, hi, you're my mom and we're the same age. That's great. So
That's gotta suck though for like she missed her first steps and her first like tooth and her first everything, and she's just all grown up now.
Well, no. She was there for her first curse breaking.
She was. That's always a first to put in the scrapbook. I hope she.
Well, hey, they live in Fairy Tale Land. They've broken many curses already. So
does this mean now that the curse is broken on everybody that Henry's going to start calling her grandma?
that's gonna be so weird.
No,
That'd be
Henry's
terrible.
just
She'll
gonna-
feel so old.
Henry's just gonna start chanting the curse was real, and we're gonna have to
The
change
curse
it.
is real.
No, the
Start
curse
filming it.
was real, and now we're gonna have to change the name of our podcast to the curse.
Belle probably won't try to change Gold or Rumple again like she did in the episode that we'll talk about. In terms with Rumple, we'll see a lot of the history between him and the Queen, because they, especially in this episode here with that we're going to discuss with Belle, they make a few references to stuff that happened before between them that we haven't seen. And also, this isn't from San Diego Comic-Con, but Bailey Madison, who is young Snow, is going to return in season 2, and I am just so excited. Yeah,
Fucking love that kid. She's great.
Yeah, so
definitely,
Which means we'll probably...
maybe that'll be the tale of how Regina got her powers from Mom.
That's what I was
Yeah.
gonna say.
that's what I'm thinking too.
She eats a lot of hearts. I'm calling it. She eats her mom's heart. Like, evil.
And let's see. There were some photos released of, like, the first day of filming was, I believe, the 16th for the season. And there were some photos released, and apparently magic running through Storybrooke, like at the end of the finale, made a complete mess of Storybrooke. Like, there's cars overturned and buildings, windows smashed and everything. So magic is destructive, apparently. And also the writers in a little TV guide blurb said that a lot of season 2 will focus on redemption because of things like the characters did that they had forgotten about, and now since they have all the members coming back all at once, they're gonna have to deal with all over again. And also that they might possibly visit Oz as well as Neverland this season.
Is Oz a fairy?
Well, it's
They basically they've confirmed that they're not just doing fairy tale stuff.
If Wonderland is a place, then Oz can be a place.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean,
Alright.
Oz has fairies and has witches, so...
And
I mean, Oz
Actually-
could easily be a kingdom. I mean, if they need...
And what's interesting too is that in Hat Trick, when the Jefferson gets into the portal area with all the different doors, there is one that looks like it could be an Oz door. Like there's an O and a Z that are in the pattern on the door that people noticed, and it was green like the Emerald City. So because people were trying to figure out what the different doors were, and they were thinking that was an Oz one, and so it might have been a hint all the way back there, which is really interesting in my opinion. And that's about all of the news that I have found so far.
I think
interesting.
Stealthy should play the Wicked Witch that gets hit by the.
Stealthy.
Lots of news dumps here, but I'm intrigued by almost all of them.
Yeah, there's a lot of cool stuff that's come out of Comic-Con. I'm very excited by the fact that they got Peter Pan finally. That's a really great...
Yeah.
But now, what are they gonna do? They're gonna have to recast for Peter himself now, or wouldn't it be funny? It's like, yeah, it's actually what's his face actually was Peter, but then he turned into the Huntsman.
Well, I mean, ultimately, if they're gonna go with the Peter Pan story, hopefully they go with a kid, because he's a guy who never grew up.
Oh yeah,
so
perhaps.
it could just be another student at the school.
Perhaps.
So shall we move on to the episode discussion?
Sure,
Yeah.
Matt.
I don't know. Are we done with the YouTube comments?
Do we have any more YouTube comments, Mike?
I don't believe we do have any more YouTube comments. The YouTube comments have passed.
I will
there are
murder both of you.
Except for the ones where Mike has a second voice.
Yes. So who's doing episode 12, Fairy Tale Land?
I am.
Go ahead, Katie.
In a castle, a lord despairs over a war with ogres going badly, and he references that he'd asked someone for help who hadn't come. And Rumpelstiltskin shows up, as it had been he who'd been asked to come, and he says he'll save them from the ogre war if they give the lord's daughter, Belle, as a prisoner to him. Her father and fiancé try to say no, but Belle says she will go. Rumpel tells her to be forever, and she agrees so long as he keeps his word about keeping her family and her town safe. And so she goes with him, and he takes her to his castle, and at first he locks her in a tower. And then later on he has her serve him tea and start to clean up and everything, and he starts giving her a laundry list of tasks she has to do for him, and then mentions skinning children as a joke, and she drops his teacup and it chips. And she's upset about it, but he just brushes it off and says, it's just a cup, whatever. Then later on, Belle is trying to open the curtains to try and let some air and light in. And clearly some of the ice has broken a little bit because she starts asking Rumpel some questions like why he spins so much. And he says it helps him forget and kind of brushes it off when she says, "Oh, what are you forgetting?" Like, "Oh, well, I guess it worked." And when he asks what she's doing, she says she's trying to pull the curtains out, and he says he nailed them in places. He doesn't like the light. And at that moment, the curtains rip, and she falls right into his arms. And there's a little moment where you realize that they're totally going to be a thing. And she says he'll put the curtains back, but he says, oh, he'll get used to it. Then later on, they're clearly a lot closer than they were before, and she asks why Rumpelstiltskin brought her there. And when he says that he needed a caretaker, she's like, yeah, okay. She thinks that she's been lonely. And she also asks about clothes that she found in a room upstairs that were very small, and asks whether they're his or if he has a child. And he tells her that he had a son, and he lost him and his mother. And from this, Belle realizes that he was once a man, that he wasn't just this magical being. They never really say what he is, an imp, I guess. And she thinks that he thinks himself ugly because he's covered up all of the mirrors in his palace. Then her fiance Gaston shows up at the door, demanding to fight Rumpel. And before he gets one sentence out, Rumpel's like, "LOL, no," and turns him into a roast before he can finish anything, and gives it to Belle as a gift and tells her it came from a woman selling flowers. And while she cuts the stem and puts it in a vase, he asks her about her life and why she made the choice to come. And she said she wanted to be brave and heroic, and she wanted to at one time see the world and really be brave, and she didn't get to do that, but she is glad that she saved her village. She also tells Rumpel that she never cared for Gaston as he is too superficial. Then Rumpel tells her to go into town and get him some straw for when he's spinning, and when he returns, he'll share his story about his son. And she asks if he trusts her to come back, and he says no, he actually doesn't think he'll ever see her again. And so she's walking on the road with a basket that she can use to fill up with straw. When a carriage and horse approach, and she moves to the side to get out of the way, but the carriage stops. And it's the queen, Regina, who decides to walk with her and guesses exceptionally easily that she's running from someone who's her master, but who she also loves. And Belle says she could love him, but something evil is in him. And Regina says that all curses can be broken. And then makes a kind of a snarky line that says, well, I would never ask you to kiss a man that you held captive. What kind of message would that send? And I'm like, I see what you did there. And then Regina says that if he loved her, he would have let her go. And Belle says that he did. And Regina says that true love's kiss can break any curse. And so Belle returns to the castle with a basket full of straw, and Rumpel pretends he wasn't watching for her, and pretends that he's been spinning. And she asks about the story about his son. And Rumpel says he lost him, and then asks why she came back, and she says something changed her mind. And when she kisses him, he begins to turn back to a normal man. And then she says, oh, it's working, and he freaks out and demands how she knew that all curses can be broken, and figures out that it was Regina, and yells into the mirror at her, looking a little crazy at first, and then saying that, he's talking to the queen, and then you realize he knows that she can see through mirrors. And he accuses Belle of working with her to try and make him weak or overpower him, and screams that no one can love him, throwing her back into her cell. And in a rage, he smashes about half the stuff in his main room, but leaves a chipped cup intact. Later on, he comes back into her cell and tells her he doesn't want her anymore and she should go. She says he could have freed himself and had happiness, but he's a coward and couldn't take the chance, and he insists that it's because he values his power over her. But she's not fooled and says he'll always have an empty heart and a chipped cup, and just leaves. Then later on, Regina shows up at his castle and asks for help dealing with a mermaid, and he says that he won't be dealing with her today. He says her deception failed and she'll never beat him, and then she taunts him about the girl on the road and says that she had nothing to do with that tragedy. And that sparks his interest, and he says, well, what are you talking about with a tragedy? And she says that when Belle returned to her home, since her fiancé had gone missing and no one wanted her because of her association with Rumpelstiltskin, and her father had locked her in a tower and had her scourged to try and purify her because apparently Rumple is thought of as pure evil, and because of all the cruelty she committed suicide. And when Regina leaves, Rumple takes his cup and puts it on a pedestal, replacing a goblet, and starts to cry. And then we go, and it's very sad. And then we can go over to Storybrooke.
But I just thought of something actually. Since magic is back, like, will Rumple value Belle over it? So will Rumple lose his powers? Because he wants Belle instead?
No, he didn't. He didn't. Remember when he went to the well at the end of the last episode or whatever, he was able to get something back that he had lost. He could have chosen Bay, but instead he chose magic, and he says magic is power. He's clearly still power hungry.
Mm-hmm.
So he's gonna choose his power and
I don't think he has to choose now between magic and Belle.
Because
I think he does.
He was able to say I love you, and she said I love you too. And he brought magic back, and she's already with him. He doesn't.
Well, when they kiss, he's gonna lose his powers if he becomes Rumpelstiltskin again.
Well, let's save that discussion for the episode in question.
Yeah.
All right, Storybrooke. Okay. So, in Storybrooke, during all this, Mr. Gold comes up to a flower seller in a van. Mr. French, who is Belle's father from Fairy Tale Land, and he tells him that because he's behind on his rent, he's taking his van, and a lackey goes in his van and tries to drive it off, and he's like, you can't do this, and Mr. Gold's like, yes I can. He walks away. Regina observes this altercation and tries to corner Gold into a conversation, but he refuses, using the please word again. Mary Margaret and David have some conversation in the diner when Emma walks in, and Mary Margaret tells her that Henry's fine and has been his normal self. Ashley comes in. Ashley comes in with her baby, and we're like, oh, forgot about Ashley, because she comes and sits with her baby and talks with them for a few minutes, and she says that she doesn't see Sean much, which is her father of her baby, because he works double shifts and is sad that he can't get off for Valentine's Day. Ruby invites them to a girls' night out for Valentine's Day when Emma gets a message from the station. Gold walks into a rich house and looks around with a gun, and then he meets Emma in there, and it turns out the house is his and he's been robbed. Gold says Emma can leave as he knows exactly what was taken and who did it, but Emma threatens obstruction of justice, and he tells her that the culprit is Mo French, the flower seller in the first scene who he took the van from. And Emma says she'll find him, and Gold says that he'll find him first, and bad things happen to bad people. So Emma's like, okay. Emma finds Rumple's stolen property, as she'd gone to Mo French's place, but she hasn't caught him yet. Rumple says that there's still something missing, and says he'll find him first. Ruby, Mary Margaret, and Ashley have a few drinks, and Ruby tries to coax Ashley into flirting with guys with her. That was a scene, because I'm like, Ruby, don't do that.
Yeah.
But she refuses.
Yeah.
Gold encounters David in the convenience store, and David is buying 2 Valentine's Day cards and awkwardly pretends that they're for the same woman, because Gold is there in line with him. David's like, nope, I couldn't decide. That's why I'm buying 2 of them. Gold tells him that he's lucky to have love, and it can vanish. He's buying duct tape and rope.
Totally legit.
What are you doing for your Valentine's Day plans, Mr. Gold? I'm just. This is perfect. We see
He's
him
been
driving
reading
a-
50 Shades of Grey.
I was gonna say the same thing.
His inner goddess is exploded. We see him driving a fly. Tied up, gagged in the back. Rumple takes him to an empty cottage at gunpoint. Mr. French asks him to like let him explain, but Gold shoves his cane like into his mouth and is like pushing on it, and he demands that he tell him where the object is that he took and who put him up to it. He begins beating him with his cane, but French insists that it wasn't his fault, shouting about but Gold is shouting about shutting her out, and Emma stops him from beating the crap out of him. At the bar, Ashley isn't feeling better and decides to go home, but Sean shows up on his break in one of the most adorable scenes in the freaking show, and he proposes to her, and he's like, oh, yeah, it's Valentine's Day. And she says yes, and goes on a ride with him for the rest of his work break, because he's there on break, because he couldn't get Valentine's Day off. Mary Margaret leaves the bar, and David shows up to give her a Valentine. Oh my god, this is the worst fucking scene. He accidentally hands her Catherine's card, and it says, Dear Catherine, I woof you, and has a picture of a dog. And he's like, I am so sorry. And it's like, nope, you're not recovering from that.
No.
Mary Margaret, oh my god. Mary Margaret says he should just go home to her, and says they need to find another way. David says he won't give up, and they'll find a way. Oh my god, just break up with Catherine, or break things off with Mary Margaret. For Christ's sake. Mr. French will apparently live, and Emma tries to get the full story of what he did to Gold. What he took from him, yeah. Gold tries to brush her off, and she arrests him, which is a funny kind of scene, because Gold's like, you just caught me beating a guy who was like duct tape, but I'm just gonna
walk away.
Nope. I'm just gonna leave. And Emma's like, no, you're kind of under arrest. So Emma takes Gold to jail. And she's joking and says that she could repay his favor by because what was it, the baby episode, Emma owes Gold a favor, so she's joking and says, you could repay the favor and I could give you half of my sandwich. And then Regina comes in and says that Emma can have half an hour with Henry to go get ice cream.
Half of her sandwich.
So she can go talk to Gold alone. And so Emma's the best sheriff ever, and is like, okay, and goes to take Henry out for ice cream, and leaves him alone with the prisoner. It's kind of like an intense scene.
Regina should fire her immediately afterwards.
Yeah, it should be
like
a
a
test. It's like, no, you did not pass. Okay, you can't just leave him alone with criminals. She asks what his name is to Rumple, and he says his name has always been Mr. Gold on this earth. She says, what about elsewhere? And he reluctantly says Rumpelstiltskin, proving that he has his memories from what's it called? Fairy Tale Land.
Which we were sure of.
It's not even called that. We don't even know.
She gives him his chipped cup, and that's what he got stolen from him. And he tells her that he still has the power here, and she, best not think anything between them will change once he gets out of jail. And Regina is then seen going into a code entry area of a hospital and brings a rose to the nurse on watch and asks if anyone has been in to see her. And she's like, nope. And she goes to look in the little cell, and we see that Belle is in the asylum. What was I going to say? I actually have something. What was it? Oh, I love the scene at the beginning where Mary Margaret is sitting in the cafe, and Emma goes to talk with her, and she's saying, I kind of knew about the affair with you, David.
Oh, yeah.
And she's like, how did you know? And Emma's like, when I met you, you were kind of a top button girl. And she's like, oh my god, why didn't you tell me? And then Emma says, I'm not your mother. And I just laughed.
Yes.
I laughed and I should have. That's a fun line.
The characters actually do call attention to that, and then she says, although Henry thinks you're mine. Yeah.
Jesse, I thought you were going to say the other thing that you actually said while we were watching the episode, which was that, when I met you, you were a top button gal.
And now you're a slut. I love that too. I was terrible. I make poor commentary.
We both make horrible commentary. I'm usually rooting for all the females to make out with each other, and you're sitting there just insulting all of them.
Yeah. Like when Red Riding Hood is in the bar and she's like, I'm gonna go pick up dudes. I was just like, hey, I'm gonna go find more, boyfriends to have and then slaughter as I turn into a wolf at night. Later, guys.
And then I was saying that she was gonna go make out with. Never mind. So, are we?
Now you're a slut.
Now you're a slut.
I wanted to say, did anyone catch? And I know I read about this on Tumblr once, but it was a little interesting to me. It's really small, but did anyone catch in the very beginning of the scene in Fairy Tale Land with like Belle and her father and everything that they say "Oh my gods," plural?
Yes.
That implies a theology for Fairy Tale Land, which I would.
They also mention hell,
and it's also polytheistic.
Thor and Loki.
That's the point. Yeah, like I would like to see the kind of theology that, if it comes into play at all, to see the kind of.
It's not very religious, if so, because it's very not mentioned much.
I know, but it would be interesting because clearly it's just like a part of their way of life and the way they talk, and it would just be interesting to see what that comes from.
Yeah. Hey, Martin, I think you have Dr. two words to sum up your reactions to this episode, correct?
Yes. Why
Australian? Isn't her like,
why
British?
Australian?
Doesn't he have a British accent and she's got an Aussie accent, or am I?
He's kind of. I mean, I can't really tell what accent he has. It's kind of British. It's kind of like a sort of a Cockney kind of accent thing going on. But she is full on Australian, and if you've seen Lost, you know who, like, the actress, and you know that she has like a very thick Australian accent, and it's just like, well, are they going to talk about this?
Nope.
Is this going to be a okay?
Nope.
No, they're not.
And Gaston had nothing, right?
I mean, I guess. Yeah, in Fairy Tale Land, it kind of makes sense because they're all kind of weird, I guess. But then when you take things into account in the real world, it's like I don't know how they're gonna.
Yeah.
I just don't. I mean, I've seen people complain about it because. And I don't really agree with this issue because they say that Beauty and the Beast is supposed to be a French story, therefore Belle, who obviously has a French name, shouldn't sound Australian. She should sound French, if anything. But really, France doesn't exist in Fairy Tale Land, so I can't really see that being an issue.
Oh, Mike, the line you were thinking of is with Rumpelstiltskin. Belle says, oh, the deal's been made. I've made my choice, and Rumpel's like, she's right. The deal's been struck.
Yeah, he had a couple of really funny lines in that. Yeah. My rather large estate.
Yeah.
He does his Rumpel laugh like literally 3 or 4 times in that episode. I loved it.
I love it too. Yeah. Did anyone notice too that in Rumpel's like big chamber, there's a candelabra and a clock on a side table that looks suspiciously like Lumiere and Cogsworth?
Oh, I didn't catch that.
Because they are yeah. But speaking of the Australian thing again, at the beginning of the episode, Belle says "Papa," and I'm like, Australians don't say "Papa." She obviously wasn't written to be Australian, so.
Well, Belle says "Papa" in the Disney version.
Oh, okay.
Anybody else not like Gaston? I
too loved him because he was so ridiculous. He was too good looking.
That's what I'm saying is that because he was not important to the actual story really at all, they could have easily given him a very gimmicky, funny, comic relief personality, not just role.
That would have been
okay. No, maybe not as wacky as Gaston in the original, but a callback to that. You know what I mean? Have him be like a little bit arrogant.
Well, he was.
Well, he was when he showed up at the door. He's like, "Aha! I am Gaston!" And doink.
He literally shows up on his own as well. He needs nobody else. He's like, I can take care of this.
I think that if they had been exaggerated or phrased a little bit more exaggerated, then it would.
It would have been so out of place. It was such a down to earth, dark.
No, so what? So what? The episode can be dark and everything like that, and still have a moment. I mean.
They made him more of like a real person. Like in the beginning, when Rumpel says that he wants Belle, he immediately is like, "Oh no, I forbid it. You're not having her." Very controlling. That's how Gaston is even without the comedy in the Disney version. He is very controlling like that. He would be a horrible husband to any woman.
But that's not how they set him up. They set him up to be, honestly, if anything, you could easily feel bad for the guy. The guy just
I felt that way too.
Rumpelstiltskin just comes in, says, "Yeah, I'm taking your fiance." Takes his fiance. He tries to rescue her. He tries to be brave and whatever. I think that's stupid. But in this world, they think that's valuable. He comes in by himself, trying to rescue his fiance. Doesn't even stand a chance. Gets turned into a fucking flower.
And then she cuts off his
legs. The thing
legs.
is, he was so over the top at that point that I found it funny. Because he was like,
no, everybody found it funny.
Come to rescue. Don't.
No, sure, and it was meant to, and it was set up to be comedic and everything, and I get that. I'm just saying that like you could easily feel bad.
You think that it could it would have played off better if the goofy thing had happened to the goofy guy?
Not even that, just more like.
I can see what you're saying, Mike. You're saying we had the same thing on this because there are two scenes with Gaston. The first one where he's like, you're not taking her, and I felt really bad for him in that one because he didn't seem arrogant in that one. But then the second scene, he's like really, like, I can take all of this, and then his personality came out. But in the first one, I felt bad for him. He
did come across as arrogant a little bit to me because, and the father did this too. Like I realized that they're protecting her, but he's like, oh no, I forbid it, and like she has to really like push him away and be like, no, I'm gonna do this myself. And she says like no one's gonna decide this but me, and like and to me that was more of I mean obviously they would assume that she doesn't want to go, but at the same time they're like, oh I think it was him who actually said that he forbade it like to both of them, and that was an awfully arrogant thing to say to Rumpelstiltskin of all people, Yeah. So I don't know
if they were going for that, and it's very possible that they could have written that better to make it more obvious.
Yeah, but I mean, ultimately, I think he literally is a character who has two lines. The important parts of the plot were covered very well. Speaking of the stuff that's covered well, I believe this episode is voted as one of the is voted as the fan favorite episode of
one
the
of them.
So far.
One of the biggest ones.
Well, on the wiki, they had a poll, and literally this was 50% above anything else as far as the votes went.
Mm-hmm.
Well,
there are some people who said that they thought the pacing of Rumple and Belle's relationship was too fast, but I actually that's what I was thinking because they only have an hour episode and they split the time. And I think both actors did a really good job of clearly time has passed and they're more comfortable with each other with each passing scene. And she says, I've been here for a couple months, So they do the best they can.
I mean, in the Disney movie, they had a montage to show the passing of time, but otherwise it was within a year, right?
I thought it was faster than that. It was within a couple of weeks. I thought
it was a couple days.
In the Disney movie?
No, wait, wasn't there? Now we're all gonna face palm eventually because I'm pretty sure didn't the flower have some sort of specific time limit to it or something like that? We could look that up. There was a specific time limit.
His 21st year, but at the same time, the curse on him didn't happen right before Belle came around.
The rose in Fairy Tale Land here is just Gaston. It's not a special rose.
No, I'm talking about in the original.
Yeah, it was 21st birthday, I believe,
but,
or 18th.
21st.
Speaking of time, I actually had a point, and I'm sorry to be hogging all the points in this episode, but
God, Martin.
I very rarely actually come up with interesting stuff, but this episode kind of gives us a timeline that I know John is very fond of. Rumpelstiltskin has the puppets in his castle wherever he lives, which means that this must take place after Jiminy's
Jiminy's stuff happened way back though, because figure Geppetto was a child when that happened, and now he's
that's right.
Yeah, but we're talking about less than 100 years, because we've been theorizing.
There was something that said how long he was around.
Yeah, we've been theorizing when he became the Dark One essentially, and what this must mean is the Ogre Wars was still happening.
Yeah, but at the same time, Belle is still the same age, because she sees the dwarves in the bar later on before they meet Snow, but she's still the same age when she's in Storybrooke, so she couldn't have been that much older, I don't think.
What?
And Regina's queen,
because...
so Regina's queen, so it's happening. I don't know about the actual Snow White story. Maybe it's before the Snow White stuff really gets into motion with Prince Charming and everything. but it's when she's queen. So maybe actually it would be after Snow White's father died, probably.
I'm theorizing that this must have happened right before Rumple decided to start getting the pieces of true love. Because, like, this must be the catalyst that made him do it. Because with him having the puppets and everything, I think it implies kind of heavily that this was, especially with what you just said, with Belle being the same age when the Snow stuff was happening, there's no way that Snow is more than a few years at the most older than she was when that happened with the dwarves. So this must have been like 2 years before the curse struck, maybe?
Yeah, maybe about.
Though on the subject of the puppets,
Anyway.
I feel like the puppets were on like a pedestal, right? Like a little side table pedestal type of thing. Like that were just a little, and there were other little knickknacks around, like things like the candelabra and the clock. But when he puts the chipped cup on a pedestal, he takes a really ornate goblet away. And I wonder if we'll ever see if the goblet has significance, because that obviously meant something to him that he took away.
It was shiny.
Well, yeah, but I mean, like the puppets had something to do with, a spell that he gave, Jiminy, and he kept them as the token of the exchange. So I wonder what the goblet might have been.
He clearly turned Peter Pan into a goblet.
I don't know. It just felt like the fact that he like put the chipped cup there. It kind of seemed like he was putting it there because he lost something. Because he lost her, and so I wondered if the goblet had been a symbol of something else that he might have lost that we might see at some point later on.
Maybe his son.
Oh, no. Well, he wouldn't have had a goblet. They weren't very rich.
The goblet is Bay. Yeah. Somehow.
About Storybrooke, though, I had... there were just, like, little things that I wanted to question in this episode, which is one of the reasons why I really like it. Like, who's Gold's henchman? We don't really see him.
Yeah.
And I wonder if he'll show up in Fairy Tale Land, or if he'll be, like, a more prominent, like, actual secondary character rather than just like a couple of cameos here and there, because that would intrigue me, like someone who's Gold's lackey, if maybe he had some kind of apprentice or something, or some kind of story with that in Fairy Tale Land that corresponds. I don't know.
Well, he probably had guardsmen. Granted,
maybe
he didn't need them because he could easily defend himself, but just to give appearances, he probably had guards around his castle, like in particular when he's away off making deals and whatnot. Someone's got to watch the homestead.
And also who the nurse is. I wonder if
she's Captain Hook.
You know that whole last scene. Have any of you seen One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest?
No. Oop. Sorry.
Well, it takes place. Sorry, how dare you? It takes place in a mental institute, and specifically, there is a very famous nurse character called Nurse Ratched, who was voted the number 5 top villain of the past of 100, like the top 100 villains by like the AFI movie.
And you're saying this is Dr. Will?
And no. And then when Regina goes into the asylum, she passes an Indian guy mopping up, and there was an Indian guy who mopped up in One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest, and I'm like, why are they making so many specific references to One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest? Because the nurse had the same hairstyle as Nurse Ratched, and they're in a mental institute, and I'm like, are they just doing this as like an inside joke, or is this going to be like, I mean, there's no way they could possibly make One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest some sort of fairy tale, but
Batman will show up and be like,
that's interesting, because I actually thought her hair reminded me of like a modernized World War II style. Like that kind of like short curled look,
Yeah.
So I was trying to. That's interesting though. I've never seen the film. I've heard it's really good, but I haven't seen it.
Ooh, I actually have one other gripe about the episode. When Emma kisses Henry and breaks the curse, it's immediate. It's a small kiss. It's immediate. It's a massive curse that's being broken. Belle kisses Rumple, and they need to make out vigorously for 10 minutes straight for it to break his curse.
Well, if you think about it, he's been Rumpelstiltskin, like the dark.
So what? The curse has been enacted in Storybrooke for 28 years,
and he's been Rumpelstiltskin for like 75.
So what? One little kiss
and he
does 28 years,
and he doesn't want to let go. He doesn't want to let go. There's a difference.
He hangs on to that power. I mean, everybody in Storybrooke, regardless of whether they know about it or not, presumably wants have their
I
memories
don't
back.
think that it has anything to do with what you want. Magic is magic. I think that that's a separate entity from you.
But Rumpelstiltskin is a magical being.
No, it's magic plus his original self is what he was, is what he's become, the imp.
Maybe she just wasn't a very good kisser.
Well, like I said, they had to make out for several minutes in order to equal one kiss on the forehead with Emma and Henry.
Well, I mean, to me, like, it would make sense that someone like Rumpelstiltskin would be harder to try and break a curse, especially if he says no, than and he has the magic to stop it. Then
he's not trying to stop it. It's not like he even knows what's going on when she's first doing it.
Right, and every time we've ever seen
how much power is involved in the Dark One. Think about it. He single-handedly ended the Ogre War.
Yeah.
No one else could do that. He can match the Queen point for point and mock her at it.
So what? The curse
He's not
implanted
just magical. He's something beyond.
So what? The big curse altered everybody's memories, sent them all to a completely different world, set up a whole different setting, has rules, has this
and it was cast by a mortal.
And it was made to be broken.
Not only was it made to be broken, it was cast by a mortal. Who created the curse of the Dark One? They don't explain that. It wasn't some guy sitting in a corner. That has to be something incredible.
I'm just saying that it's not explained why...
No, they haven't explained it, and they're probably not going to get around to explaining it until much later in the series
if
when
at
they
all.
explain where the power of the Dark One comes from.
I'm just saying that it is a continuity error as of right now, from what we know.
It's not really that big of a continuity
error.
No,
it's not big. I'm just saying. I'm just pointing out there's a difference.
Well, we've seen this. We've seen evidence of this before because Graham kissed Emma for one time and he didn't get all his memories back. He just flashed back briefly. He kissed her again. He got everything back because he was ready.
Though that had more to do with the fact that she was a savior. If it was true love, everybody
were falling for each other, though.
No, but if it was true love, everybody would have gotten their memories back. When it was Emma kissing Henry once, everybody got their memories back because it was true love. With him, it was just because she was the savior and he was interacting with magic, kind of again, you know.
Okay.
So, and every other time that
love is a very intangible concept, so it's very difficult to be like, well, this didn't work, this didn't work, this should have worked.
We've seen true love's kiss 3 times now. We've seen it with Belle and Rumpelstiltskin. We've seen it with Charming and Snow when Snow is put in the enchanted sleep, and we've seen it with Emma and Henry. And 2 of them are very similar, and 1 of them is not.
Well, hold on a second. There's another reference to one. There's another reference to one in the next episode. With Frederick, Charming asks Abigail if she tried kissing the gold statue version of Frederick because it would be true love's kiss, and she says yes, but it didn't work. And he realizes that because he was gold, that prevented, because she's not kissing him, she's kissing gold, pure gold now. So there is evidence of other times where something interferes that is magic related to the true love's kiss.
Mm-hmm.
I think the subplot for this episode should be called "Sex and the Storybrooke."
Every episode.
Sex and the Story.
I agree with Jesse though. The proposal in the bar was extremely cute.
It was so
really,
cute.
really, really cute.
Did you catch there was a little throwaway line at the end of that? Whereas he goes to take him away, she agrees to leave with him. He goes, well, then your carriage awaits.
Yeah, I know. I heard that too.
Yeah.
Did anybody else think it was creepy as fuck watching how Gold reacted to French the entire time? Especially with the beating scene. Like, oh my god, that was scary.
It's tough to watch.
Well, that goes back to the Dark One concept. That was the Dark One bleeding through. Because if you go back to some of the fairy tale scenes where you see the Dark One and how he deals with things, he's utterly ruthless. And in this case, he's believing Regina's lie that it was the Father King that caused Belle to commit suicide. And he's taking out all of his wrath on him. That is the Dark One bleeding through.
But that begs the question. Oh, wow. That begs the question that he's had rent with Mr. Gold for however long, for 28 years, and for 28 years he hasn't given the guy shit.
No, he has been. He's been taunting the guy constantly. You know, you could tell that they had, like in the beginning of the episode, they had some sort of relationship where he was in debt to Mr. Gold, and Mr. Gold's like, nope, take in your van.
I know, but I mean, like, he obviously didn't go to the lengths that he went to in this episode with him, is my point.
Well, that's because this time he had
The
an
cup.
excuse. I think in the
Yeah, that's
past,
true.
the thing is that the father has always been under the curse. So, like everyone else, more than a day or two ago is hazy and indistinct, and I don't really remember.
Mhm.
Well, Gold remembers, but he's never really had anything to nail this guy on. And now, because Regina meddled, of course, he's got something to really take out his frustration on.
And not only that, he was extra enraged because in his mind, that guy took his cup, his last
that's
remnant
true.
of Belle, and so he wanted to take.
And he wants his goddamn kidney back.
Yeah. Oh, and speaking of taking and having, when Regina and Gold are talking in the prison, did anyone catch the implied double meaning when Gold asks, "Do you have what I want?" and she smiles and says, "Yes." She has the cup. She has Belle.
Mm.
What is
Oh.
she really answering there?
Interesting. I didn't catch that.
Yeah.
Also, how did Regina know that the cup was important to him?
Because she was in when to me, like, she's clearly visited Rumpelstiltskin before when she comes to his castle.
Sure.
And he had replaced. Oh no, he hadn't. Not yet.
I think she just saw it through the mirror.
She saw it.
Maybe
somehow.
The mirror was covered up.
No, he had pulled it off.
Had he recovered the mirror though? At the end of
Probably
the series?
would have. Yeah.
Maybe
would have
she.
Go ahead.
Maybe she read Henry's book.
Maybe.
Actually, that's not that harebrained an idea.
Because I'm sure the story mentioned that.
She had the book before.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, and she did go through it a bit.
So that would be the impetus for her to be like, "Oh, hey, this guy actually cares about
Yeah, that's
something."
possible. That's a
Yeah,
possible
that is-
explanation. But in general, though, in the episode, she just kind of knew a lot. She had a very Rumpelstiltskin-esque knowledge of everything. Like, oh, I know Belle happens to be in the forest right now, walking away from Rumple because Rumple just let her go. I know exactly how I can manipulate her into going back and trying to break the curse. I know exactly how I can do this. I know exactly how I can get to Rumple.
Well, I actually wonder. That made me wonder when you just said it. If he has the mirrors covered up, but how does that make sure she can't hear through mirrors? If she just sees, okay.
I think he would expect that, though. I think that if that's the case, he would probably have something in place to stop that as well. I doubt he wouldn't have mirrors at all if that's the case, which is kind of actually an interesting
That is
question.
interesting.
If you're not
Why
going
does he
to
have
use
mirrors?
mirrors, why the fuck do you have them? Yeah, exactly.
Maybe he does need to talk to her sometimes, though.
That would actually be interesting if they use that as a form of communication.
Maybe he just wants to talk to
Hey, dearie, can you get on Skype?
Mirror Skype.
Yeah.
Actually,
That's his ringtone.
there's also the possibility he needs to talk to the genie.
Why?
Genie's in the mirror. That's how. That's
Why?
how.
That's hilarious.
That's how she uses the mirror is through the genie. The genie is.
Yeah, I know, but what would he need
I
from
don't
the
know.
genie?
Hey, we don't know.
Just to talk. Maybe they hang out and have coffee.
He's the Skype connection. He's the Skype connection.
You talk. They
silly
chill.
concept, but what if Rumpelstiltskin has the ability to use mirrors as a scrying device too, even without the genie?
Maybe he has his own black genie who wanted to hit on him, and
That's the actual story they'll delve into.
that's the genie from Aladdin. That's what's gonna happen. The genie.
That is his genie.
Speaking of knowing things ahead of time, like Regina did, we've heard a lot throughout the series that Rumple can tell the future, and that he has the gift of foresight, which is why he knew about Emma and everything. If he can do that, then did he know that he was going to fall in love with Belle and that all this was going to happen?
Clearly, he didn't.
Because love works differently than everything else, he wouldn't have known.
I don't think he has this knowledge. I've said this before, and this is just kind of supports that. I don't think he actually has eternal knowledge or whatever of the future and stuff like that. I don't think he has a magical power that allows him to do it. I think that he has some sort of plan or deviousness. Something is in place so that way he can cause the future to go the way that he wants it. Or he's gotten brief glimpses through some sort of magic or deal that he's taken, a part of.
Yeah, I think it's
has
just
that
the latter.
Yeah.
Yeah, whatever
Just
knowledge he
discuss
does
that.
have, it's not omniscience.
It's not perfect. It sometimes he knows a ton, but there often seem to be just little gaps in his knowledge, just little things.
Yeah.
Plus, the other thing is, and I hate to tie in like this, but the quote that Yoda makes of the future always being in motion. Maybe he sees possible futures. So, something especially like Emma, the curse breaker, can make things go sideways. And all of a sudden, everything he saw doesn't quite happen the way he saw it now.
No, I don't think so, because if so, he wouldn't be making gambling, bets on how the future is going to turn out. He would know, oh, this is possibly how it would go, but that doesn't mean I should be certain that that's how it's going to.
He can't know all of the future, because we talked about this in episode 1 or 2 when he touches Snow's stomach when she's pregnant with Emma, and he's like, oh, and then Prince Charming he swats his hand, and he's like, ah.
Yeah,
what's that coming?
I want her name. I want her name.
Fucking speeding up the footage. But I only have one more point. Does anybody have any points?
I'm pretty much done.
My only last point is that fucking Gold being in jail and being asked his name is a direct reflection on the pilot, where he is also in prison, but he's the one asking for people's names.
Yeah.
So it's harkens back to
they have
that.
a lot of symbolism like that kind of. Is that symbolism?
Callbacks.
Yeah, they have a lot of stuff like that. What would be the name? Not symbolism.
Callback.
Reference.
Tie-in.
It's not what a reference is, and you know it, but I hate you.
Allegory, illusion.
Illusion.
It's a illusion.
Let's look up the thesaurus and
look up the thesaurus.
Yeah, it's a very in that regards, it's a very well written series, and that I like that kind of stuff. I really like that kind of stuff. So kudos to them on that.
You've got Mike's.
Okay, should we move on?
So episode 13, Fairy Tale Land, opens with Abigail arriving at King George's castle for the wedding, and there's a little bit of disturbance in the background, and George says, "Oh, don't worry about it. It's just, excitement for the wedding." And he turns to a guard and goes, "Find him." Flash to Charming riding away on a horse, being chased by a bunch of guards who are trying to more or less kill him, if not capture him. And he evades them, then turns around and whoom, gets jumped by a couple of guys who he didn't see coming. And they take him away. He's feisty, and they uncover him, and he's like, "Oh, what do you want?" And Abigail's there, and she's, "Yeah, I know you love Snow White, and I know you don't want to marry me." And he's a little confused at this point. She wants to help him escape because she doesn't want to marry him either.
And this is the point where she becomes a lot more likable.
Yes, this is the point where the character just turns.
Mm-hmm.
And so they flash forward a little bit. They're in Midas's realm now, and she says, "We should be safe at this point." And Charming presses her, "Why are you helping me?" And she says she was in love. She was going to marry someone. She wants to help Charming get back to Snow. And Charming says, "Snow told me point blank she's not in love with me anymore." And so, that's law. I've had a great loss, and, that's my suffering. And she goes, "You don't know suffering." And she leads him away to this golden statue in a little covered area that's guarded, and she says, "So that this was placed here to honor the man I love, Frederick, who sacrificed himself saving my father." And Charming says, "Well, this is amazing workmanship. This is unbelievable. I've never seen anything like it. It's like it's real." And that's because it's not a statue. That's Frederick. He was turned to gold by my father's curse when saving him. And so Charming asks, "Well, have you tried using True Love's kiss to break the curse?" And she says that she's tried repeatedly until her lips bled, and that there's only really one other way that she might maybe work, and that's this Lake Nostros. The water supposedly has magical properties. The problem is that it's guarded by this being that everyone who has tried to go there has never returned. And so Charming says,
Hold on. I just want to say, what happens at Lake Nostos stays at Lake Nostos. Quite literal.
So Charming says, I will bring you back the water, and gives his assurance that he will return or die trying. And she comments, "Well, how would this be successful if you fail?" And he's, "Well, no matter what, one of us is freed, because either I'll succeed and you will have your true love back, or I'll fail and I'll be freed from my pain." So she leads him to this small shrine near the lake and says that this is where everyone leaves offerings, and he insists that he go on alone from this point over her protests, and he goes in, he finds the lake, doesn't seem to be a guardian, and okay, he starts draining water, and there's this magical ripple. He turns and demands that the guardian show themselves instead of leaving like a reasonable person would have done. And this stunningly beautiful blonde woman rises from the lake and tries to seduce him. And he's like, no, I want nothing to do with you. And so she takes a bit of the water from the lake, pours it over itself, and turns into Snow White and says, well, how about now? Do you love me now? And he starts weakening, and she's almost got him. He's like, no, this isn't real. This is fake. This is an illusion. You're not really Snow. Oh, but I could be. No, you're not. And he tries to break away from her, and she gets angry, and she says, well, congratulations. You're the first to break the illusion. And she grabs him and sucks him under the water. And so she pulls him farther down toward the bottom. He breaks her grip, tries to swim away, and seaweed comes up and wraps around his leg. So he drops down toward the bottom and notices his knife sitting there, and he waits for the siren to come over, and he's got the knife in his hand. She starts kissing him. She's going to drown him. And he stabs her and kills her, and this allows him to break free of the seaweed, and he swims back up to the surface and takes the water, and he leaves. And flash back to Abigail, and she's still at the statue, and she hears the horses and turns around, and he comes running out of the darkness, and he's got the water, and she can't believe he's back. And so she takes the water, she pours it over the statue, and Frederick ungolds and turns back into a real man, collapses to the ground, and he has no idea what has happened, and she's completely excited. He's back, utterly thankful to Charming, and Charming says, it's great. I'm glad you guys can be together, and my price for freeing you is that you need to marry the woman you love, and the two of you need to be happy together. And can I have a horse and some supplies? Because I need to bug out. So Abigail says, oh, so where are you going? He says, I'm going to go after Snow. True love has to be fought for, and you have to put effort into it. And I'm going to really go for this. I'm going to go find her. And she thinks this is wonderful. They promise all the supplies he can carry. And Charming takes off, rides off. Flash forward to a scene, which is a scene we've seen before, where he comes riding up and he's shouting out Snow's name, and Red comes out of the reeds carrying a basket. And they have an exchange where, yeah, no, she left. I haven't seen her since she went off to the castle. Oh, well, what happened to her? I don't know. And they have a conversation, and then you realize, well, it's just Charming's not getting the whole picture, and Red spells it out for him. And he realizes, oh, wait a minute. Nothing changed Snow's mind. Someone changed Snow's mind. George did this. And then you hear noise off in the distance, and here come George's guards, and they're riding after him. And so he grabs Red, and the two of them take off onto their horse and ride off away from the guards. And that's Fairy Tale Land.
I found it
Very
kind
cool.
of anticlimactic because I thought Frederick was going to turn out to be like a bad guy, and she was freeing him because she tricked Prince Charming.
Frederick
like,
is
he's
Captain
this nice
Hook.
guy.
Oh
my God.
about the scene at the end, I was kind of thinking, and I didn't have the time to go back to the other episode and watch the other scene, but I kind of think that this is an extension, not necessarily a change. Because I think that, I could be wrong, that the last one, it ended with like, okay, then she's not here. I haven't seen her since she left. Okay, then I will find her. And that's where it ended.
Well, I think in
that's
the
where it
first
ended.
one,
And then, what?
we'll get back to this, but I think in the first one he turns and rides away.
But anyway, we should go to Storybrooke.
Alrighty.
Speed through
So
it.
for Storybrooke, Catherine tells David that she wants to go to Boston for law school, and she wants to start kind of anew. And so David talks to Mary Margaret and says, "How you doing?" and all that fun stuff. And they basically decide that they need to tell Catherine what's going on. And David reluctantly agrees. So Emma and August run into each other. They finally exchange names, have a bit of a dialogue, and they agree to have some sort of date. Mary Margaret and Emma have a brief exchange as well, where they update each other on what's going on in each of their respective stories for the episode. And then David has his encounter with Catherine and tells her that he's leaving her, etc., but does not tell her anything about Mary Margaret being involved because he's trying to spare her feelings, and he's just a royal fuck-up. And then we see August is changing Henry's book, the Once Upon a Time book, which is very interesting and got the fans all aflutter. Is that a word? A flutter?
Mm-hmm. That's flutter.
Okay, yes. All right, cool. And Regina gives Henry a video game for a gift. I don't know why. And so
it's fucking what is it? Space Paranoids. It's the game from Tron.
Oh, it is. I totally didn't realize
Oh my god.
You guys didn't know that?
No, I totally missed that.
I recognized the name. I had no idea what it was from.
See, you guys don't play enough Kingdom Hearts.
I don't play Kingdom Hearts at
No,
all.
I've never played Kingdom Hearts.
Because there's a whole world based on Space Paranoids, and as soon as they said Space Paranoids, I was like, wait a minute, what?
I totally missed that I get it now.
And the kid has a Tron lunchbox as well, so they're just trying to tie Tron into it.
Oh,
Maybe there'll be a Tron world, who knows?
I've seen Tron Legacy, but I've seen both of them, but I didn't get that.
All right, so anyways, Catherine meets with Regina and says what's going on. And Regina lets slip that Mary Margaret is a home wrecker. And so Catherine, what does Catherine do?
She demands.
Catherine goes to. Catherine kind of bitches at Regina and then leaves and goes to see Mary Margaret. Before that, though, David calls Mary Margaret, says, "Hey, we're gonna have a date, right?" And she says, "Sure." And Catherine walks in, slaps her, yells at her, leaves. And now everybody knows that Mary Margaret's a whore. And so David... no, not David. So August meets Emma, and they have their date where they go to a well, which is you're led to believe is the remnant of Lake Nostos after the curse. And they drink from it, and they have, again, more of an exchange. Kind of makes you think that there might be some potential romantic relationship there, maybe. But clearly, there's a whole mystique to August where he knows things that he shouldn't, and Emma doesn't know things that she should. Then we see Mary Margaret catches up with David trying to scrub off paint from her car that somebody had said tramp on there. So he's trying to cover it up, and he's not doing a very good job. And so she says, "Yeah, no, you lied to her. You lied to me. I don't like it." And now everybody's unhappy. And then Catherine comes back to Regina and says, "Remember when I was yelling at you before? I'm sorry. I'm just so sorry about everything. I just took a couple of pills and everything's good now." And so I told David that everything's good and that he and Mary Margaret should be together. And Regina goes, "Well, what?" And so Regina breaks into both of their houses, steals the letter that Catherine had written to both of them. And what happens here? Hold on.
You missed the part where she found the box with the book in it.
Oh, right. Emma finds the book, and it was in a box which clearly August had placed there.
It would have been terrible if she didn't see it and she backed up over
Yeah, I
it.
know. It was in Henry's box, but he had placed it in a gutter full of water by her car.
Right. So she gets the book back and gives it to Henry, and they don't know that the book has been changed. And then Mary Margaret is crying, and Emma comforts her. And you also see that Catherine has mysteriously disappeared, and Frederick's Storybrooke counterpart has discovered that something was going on. So you know that Frederick is around, and that is the it.
And you also see that Regina.
Is the it.
As Regina sets the letter on fire, she reveals that there's a can of spray paint in her drawer. So she's the one who.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
It's terrible.
Oh, that's what that was. I thought it was bug spray.
No, it's spray paint. So back to an episode where I don't like the Storybrooke stuff that happens, but I do like the fairy tale stuff. I really liked the story with Abigail. I thought it made her a really interesting character because I really thought she was gonna be the bitchy, like whiny, spoiled princess, but she's got so much more like depth to her, and she's a really neat character. And I actually kind of would like to see more of her in Fairy Tale Land, like maybe like meeting Snow White or then maybe helping them at some point, just because she seems like a really interesting, strong character.
Yeah, what happens
She's
to her after Regina is
Yeah.
banished or whatever?
Yeah.
She could still come into play, like, during the whole, the fight against Regina and stuff. She
Yeah.
could easily be
And I'm
involved.
wondering what happened to Midas and Storybrooke because clearly Midas and she have a decent relationship. They don't have a relationship like George and his fake
Oh, well, that's
son.
easy. Midas touches himself and turns to gold.
Well, no,
Lonely night.
Midas has 24 hours to stop a terrorist attack. You know this.
And that's why he touches himself.
Oh God.
I'm sorry.
And all along, I thought Midas was just the muffler place in town.
Uh, oh,
Hey, someone had
the-
to say it.
like
The Midas touch would be bad for car repair. He just touches and the whole thing, like the wheel turns.
Well, it would be good for Pimp My Ride.
yes.
Yo, we got King Midas up in here. He just comes over, just taps it. Yeah.
See, I think the Midas thing might be awful for a lot of things, and that's kind of why that story happened. That was kind of the moral of it.
Nostos is Greek for return, which is pretty direct of what the magic the water in the lake is supposed to do, and then the wishing well. So, I was like,
And it brings magic back, so it returns.
yes. So, because the whole point is bringing back something that was lost to you.
Right, yes.
So, and this is also where we see Granny getting a little feisty. When-
Yeah, oh my god. She bumps into
Like,
her.
cause-
She's like,
But
shit.
Oz is talking to Emma for the first time, and he's trying to convince her to hop on his, or no, he was trying to convince her to hop on his bike so they can go to the well and everything. And
She
she's like,
turns into the grandma from Mulan.
yes, like, oh, if you don't get on, I will. I'm bring up for the next war.
It's kind of funny that Granny is the one to be like, you should be ashamed of yourself, when she is the grandmother of what appears to be the biggest slut in Storybrooke.
Yeah, I love that. It's in the same episode because in the same episode that she says, if you don't jump on there, I will. She's like, go get him, Emma.
Shame.
And then that happens. She's like, you should be ashamed of yourself. It happened in
Yeah.
the same episode, so I'm like,
Yeah.
oh.
I have to say, like part of like this is one of the things I don't like. I feel bad for Mary and Margaret, but at the same time, they kind of brought this upon themselves. Why is everyone going after Mary Margaret, but no one is saying, David, you're a fucking dumbass for going after another woman?
Because it's
Because as
okay
far
for a
as-
dude to do it. He's getting all the
Well-
pose, but if she
Well,
does it
as far
before,
as far as the neighborhood goes, it's because that the family is a cohesive unit, and then Mary Margaret is the alien element that ruins it. So
She's
as far
the
as they're
homewrecker.
concerned, she's the
Yeah.
homewrecker. Like the home is David and Catherine.
Yeah, I understand
Everything-
that, but and
yeah.
I know that that's generally the idea with like just in general with real life and everything. But come on, no, why does no one ever yell at the guy just as much as the girl? Like, you wrecked your own home, you
No,
asshole.
they do yell at the guy when it's the other way around.
Yeah, well, he's still an asshole for
I don't think gender has much to do with it. I just think that in this particular situation, it was, I
Well,
mean,
the
they
other
both-
way around, the guy ends up on Maury Povich bragging about how many marriages he's broken up. But
And another reason why everybody's on Mary Margaret's case is because David is fucking lying to everybody.
That's-
He's trying to get out of it by hiding the fact that he's doing something wrong.
Mm-hmm.
yeah,
That's true.
So I mean, if you can cover that up with a lie, but ultimately, it's going to fall down. Everything's going to fall down around you, which is what ends up happening.
Yeah. Oh, by the way, we were talking about this either last week or last time or the time before. Mike with the skeleton keys. This is when Regina uses it for the first time. I think she goes into Mary Margaret's apartment at some point, but I don't know if we see her doing that. But we see her using the ring of keys to get into the house this time.
Mhm.
So,
Yep.
yeah.
I can't see skeleton keys the same way again since earlier discussion on this episode.
God.
I'm genuinely shocked that none of you, especially Jesse and Mike, have pointed out the fact that when is it David or James?
David in
It's David, isn't
Storybrooke.
it? Yes. David, when he's talking to Mary Margaret, he says, "I choose you."
Oh, I didn't see that. You're right. He
Len-
does.
I thought
And the
but
So we know that when he's in Fairy Tale Land, he's James, as in. But when he's in Storybrooke, he's Ash.
oh my god! So we
I
really
can picture Prince James just flying up and saying, "I am a flaming mole trace," and he's wearing the outfit.
Does that mean that Mary Margaret is Misty?
no.
Mary Margaret would be Jessie, right?
No, in Fairy Tale Land, but then in if he says I.
Well, they are.
Complete makeover.
Yeah, okay, well then in theory that means that she would be Jessie in Fairy Tale Land,
is
and
the
then
same
she'd be
voice
Pikachu
actress, though,
in
right?
fucking Storybrooke.
No.
I choose you.
So is Mr. Whale Brock?
It's awful. What?
Dr.
Mr. Whale is Brock.
Dr.
That's
Whale.
the big reveal
No.
in season 2.
No, he's Whalmer. He's Whalmer.
Oh.
That
It'll
was
be,
way
I'll be
more
sad,
than-
legitimately, if he is like the whale from Pinocchio, because it's so anticlimactic. Because we're
I know.
making it up to be
That-
like such a big
There's
deal.
no way. There's no way.
Actually,
Watch, he'll be the meta character that we thought August was.
He'll be
Right.
Peter Pan somehow. Feels
Oh,
like they-
this is interesting. 'Cause, when like Mike made a reference to this when he was going through the summary, that a lot of people were really interested in what August was really doing with the book, and if he was fixing it, if he was adding to it, and he was adding to it, and someone screen capped like a high resolution like thing of the pages he was adding, and interestingly enough, he's adding a grim fairy tale, which is called The Golden Bird. Which is one of the lesser known ones.
Flaming Mole Trace.
Yeah.
The Golden Bird.
Yeah, it's one of those stories of like, oh gosh, I haven't read that in a really long time, but it like it takes, the humble guy to go and find the prize of the golden bird and keep it without, people trying to steal it from him, and like a fox helps him out, and at first he doesn't listen like how a lot of the grim fairy tale characters do, and then he ends up helping him out and then doing him a service at the very end, and it's a neat little story, but I'm really wondering if they'll ever come back to that in season 2 or even season 3 or something, with the actual story brought to life,
Yeah. I kind of wonder, because I've read the story more recently when that article showed up on all of the various Once Upon a Time sites. I went off and I read the fairy tale. Basically, every time the main character is presented with advice that's sound and reasonable, he does the opposite of what's common sense. I wonder
Yeah.
if this is supposed to be some kind of analogy to everything David's doing in this episode. Every time he's
Yeah.
presented with the right thing to do, he does the exact opposite.
Yeah.
That wouldn't surprise me.
And it seems to like I used to have a big book of original Grimm's fairy tales as a kid. I still have it somewhere. I don't remember where. But like there are several stories with the Grimm brothers that the hero of the story makes a lot of wrong choices first before he finally makes the right ones, and then he'll redeem them sometimes, and sometimes they won't. But they're never as completely black and white heroes as Disney would lead you to believe and whatnot. It's kind of interesting.
Yeah.
But I would like to see the Golden Bird and maybe some of the other lesser known Grimm's fairy tales, because it's neat that they'll expand into folk tales and international stories and whatnot in season 2 as well. But I'd like to see some of the lesser known ones that they originally drew from.
Yeah.
I can't wait for Mulan to haunt us.
Now I'm just
they
picturing
showed
a
it.
ghost Pocahontas now, or
They showed
Mulan,
it-
because you're like
they showed a video at
What? Fucking.
I didn't say
Jesse just
Mulan to
said.
haunt her. I said Mulan to
Mulan
haunt
to haunt us. She's gonna haunt us.
Haunt us.
No.
Mulan is gonna
God.
haunt us. You can't wait for Mulan to haunt us.
Who we gotta call?
Oh, no.
Mulan. Sorry.
No, she's the ghost. Why would you call
Hey,
her?
Mulan, I want someone to haunt us. Okay. Then she comes
Oh
over.
my god! I think there was a video that they showed. I think at Comic-Con with a lot of the title cards, like how we noticed that the title cards always have a reference to like one of the characters in the episode. Like for Rumple and Belle one, it was the spinning wheel. They showed title cards of 3 of them from season 2, and one of them is Mulan fighting with a sword, and one in her like traditional Japanese Chinese dress, and then there's one with Aurora, and then there's one with the Beanstalk, like Jack and the Beanstalk. But there is one of a very ghostly Mulan fighting with a sword, and that was going to be my point, but whatever.
Mulan to haunt us.
Yes. Oh God. We are the masters of horrible puns.
So, anybody else have any points about the episode?
I think I'm good.
Fairly episode. Not bad, not
I
good.
liked the fairy tale, and I didn't like Storybrooke for this one again. So
When they saw the statue, like I think James walks up to it. No, not even the statue. It's the gold Frederick. He says, "I've never seen anything quite so lifelike," and I'm like, "It's a suit of armor."
well, no.
I mean, how difficult can it be to just make a suit of armor? People make suits of armor all the time, like out of like regular material. How difficult can it be to just replicate that in gold? I mean,
but you don't normally do that with a statue. Is the thing. The statue, you've got to design it a little differently so the parts stay together properly, and you're going to take creative license. In a lot of cases, you're not going to make it look battle ready, so to speak.
but I think only one more point. We talked about James's the real James, the brother of James, fake James, whatever. How like the reason that we thought that he was able to kill the dragon when real James probably wouldn't have been able to is because real James was very arrogant and overconfident. And when going into this mission for Lake Nostos, James
was really arrogant, wasn't he?
Yeah,
he was really sure of himself.
He literally says the words, "None have my fearless bravery," and I'm like, "What the hell?"
And then at the shrine, he's like, "Well, no, and didn't help any of them." And I was like, "Oh God damn! Is this the real James, or is this charming?" Because that was completely not in character of him.
Yeah. Maybe stuff is rubbing off on him.
I still don't agree with you guys that the original James couldn't have taken that dragon.
You don't agree with us with a lot of things, though, Mike.
Yeah, I'm just saying.
We should go to a Comic-Con panel and just ask that question. Could the original James have killed that dragon? Yeah. Just to satisfy your curiosity.
Yeah.
And then the panel ends 40 minutes later with the two killing each other up on stage.
Yeah.
We just have the actor who plays James just punch himself in the face and see which one is stronger.
But then you get Jennifer Goodwin mad at you because she's actually with him, and she plays Bandit Snow. She could kick your ass.
Well, I would tell her that I thought she was better as a top button girl.
And then she'd really kick your ass and
then just call her a slut outright, and then everything.
I will paint tramp all over her car before she leaves.
Oh boy, you're just asking for getting your ass kicked by a bunch of hot women.
I have a feeling when the season comes up that since Snow has lost having seeing Emma's first tooth and Emma's first everything, she might treat her like a kid at first. Be like, don't stay out past your bedtime.
So much potential.
Sometimes for hilarity to happen with that.
Yeah.
Like her with boys, it's gonna all change.
Yes. Oh my God, that's gonna be so fun. I could see it being very funny.
Just a week ago, you were telling me to sleep with him. Well, I know I'm your mother now, so
Where
don't do that.
For a little girl.
I don't need another grandchild just yet.
It also means Henry has a great grandpa who is evil.
Oh yeah. Well,
who are we talking about?
Well, not really evil, but kind of a jerk.
Wait,
who are we talking about?
George.
Well, he's not his real father.
Yes, he is.
No, he isn't.
Oh, right. I couldn't conceive. That's right. Yeah. Okay.
Oh, this gets sick and twisted.
Uh-oh.
This also means that Regina is his wicked great-grandmother.
Yeah.
Step-grandmother.
Oh, wow.
Wicked step-great-grandmother.
Yeah, I thought of that. I'm pretty sure I brought that up on a previous show, actually.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Congratulations.
Yes.
Congratulations, Mike.
Thank you.
So one last thing on this episode that I wanted to circle back to, because we mentioned it during the overviews. was the final scene in Fairy Tale Land, where this is the second time we've seen the same scene, and we had mentioned earlier that this actually scene changes twice. There are 3 different versions of it, and like I said, I'm pretty certain the first time we saw this, he rides up, they have a short exchange, and then he rides off, and there's no one chasing after him. He doesn't grab Red and bolt or anything. And then this time he does. He grabs Red, and they try and ride off. And in this scene, it looks like they ride off, and the guards chase off after him. And I know we haven't gotten to the next one yet, but if memory serves, and I'm going to have to go back and rewatch to be sure of this, they catch him.
No,
he doesn't actually get him.
No. The end of this scene,
Red.
The end of that scene is he rides off, and Red doesn't come with him, and he says, "What are you doing?" He says, "I'm going to give you time." And then and then takes off the cloak and turns into the werewolf on command, apparently, because she can do that.
But it wasn't in the middle of the day.
Yeah.
No, it was nighttime.
No, it was the middle of the day.
Middle of the day. But he gets captured shortly thereafter.
I think he gets captured by the queen.
Oh, sure, but that could have happened in theory in any of the other 2 instances of that scene as well in the aftermath.
Yeah, but they imply it's like a matter of hours later.
Well, I mean, George has guards looking all over for him still.
Yeah, exactly. They're combing the entire kingdom looking to catch or kill him.
So it's probably just a different group.
Yeah. But I mean, still, the first time he rides off brave and noble. The second time, they try and dash away. The third time, she has to jump the guards, and he still gets caught running away.
The writers, I guess, really couldn't decide what they wanted to do for that scene.
Yeah, either that or there's a degeneration going on here of the storyline that is intentional, and we're missing either other clues or they're going to backfill that later on. Or if you follow your theory that they're the guys from Lost, they're never going to backfill it and just let us twist.
Yeah. We'll probably have like 5. We'll probably have 5 more versions of that scene at the end of the season 2.
One of the interesting things about us
Red
doing
pulls out a piñata.
Yeah, one of the interesting things about us doing this podcast actually is that once the series is over, we can kind of rewatch our old episodes and be like, I wonder if they ever... Well, I mean, we talk about every single mystery that we don't know of right now. So maybe it'll be interesting to see how many of these mysteries have been solved and how many of them went unsolved. So we'll see if they pull another Lost.
Yeah. The scene, we first see it in episode 10, by the way.
Episode 10?
7:15 a.m. Yeah, that's the episode.
The scene ends with him turning and running off screen, as though he's probably going to get back on his horse or something. You don't see him ride off in episode 10. You just see him turn and run off screen.
Interesting. I wonder, I think that this was intended to be an extension, but that's just my theory.
That's my opinion.
Then the next version might be a change.
Yeah.
We'll find out.
All right, so we are Once Upon a Time fans, and you are listening to The Curse is Real.
I can't wait to hear the YouTube comments for this episode.
Oh my god.
There's going to be so many YouTube comments that I'm going to go to YouTube and see the comments in the YouTube comments section. And there will be comments in that YouTube comment section that I will read with my eyes.
Asylum.
Oh wait, we should...
Yeah.
While I'm in the asylum, I will check the YouTube comments.
You know someone's going to try and correct me on Xylem.